You're listening to the Jiu Jitsu Lou Podcast, and I'm Lou Temlett. I'm guessing you're having a good day because either you've been on the mats, are considering getting on the mats, or maybe shouting advice from the corner. I'm so happy you're here listening or watching this episode. Please don't tap out before the end. When you want to start a production company, start training Jiu Jitsu. I'd like to welcome Lo Furneaux to my podcast. Hi, Lo. Hey.
Lovely to be here, finally. As you can see, been a fan for a while, so it's nice to actually be on for once.
I love it. So Lo has just held up a piece of Jiu Jitsu Lou merchandise, and I had a little squeal and cheer to myself when the order was placed. So thank you very much. You have a Jiu Jitsu Lou podcast mug of a giant size.
Size. Bucket of tea. It's wonderful. What the size of a mug? Nobody wants a small one.
Exactly. So thank you very much for following my journey and being part of this show today. I know you from your socials and from you not having a belt. So please explain.
Yes. So I brand myself on socials a little bit as low no belt. It's mostly because I don't feel like I can tell people I have a white belt because I don't do the gi. I only ever train in no gi. And since there are no belts in no gi, it seems a little silly to even tell people I'm a white belt sometimes because I don't even know how to tie the belt, if I'm perfectly honest with you. So I can't really say that I've got one. But yeah, it took me quite a while to get into jiu-jitsu, if I'm perfectly honest with you. My journey was long and confusing, I would say. I started off as a very sporty child, but when I left school, I didn't really do any sports after that because I found the gym very, very boring. Who wants to just run on a treadmill and stare at a wall or a TV for a couple hours? So I got very, very kind of lazy and didn't really do any sports whatsoever until I found MMA. Was it with Conor McGregor and the Khabib on them? What game was it? It was EA's UFC 3 was the game I actually discovered it through.
Wow.
I'm a bit of a video gamer, as a lot of people who actually see me in person will know. So I played that game religiously when it first came out. Because it reminded me of the old school wrestling PlayStation 2 games that I used to play with my brothers when I was little in secret. So my mother didn't like wrestling or many sports, as I'm sure many people know back then violence isn't for girls. It's not for that kind of thing. So you're not really supposed to want to watch it, let alone want to do it at the same time.
I disagree, Lo, because I was brought up watching wrestling on a Saturday afternoon, the Big Daddy, Giant Haystacks, and then kind of WWF that became not the World Wildlife Foundation, it became WWE.
Yes.
So we were kind of surrounded by it as kids. But like you say, gaming, I mean, I just equate some of the jiu-jitsu moves now to Tekken and stuff like that. But,
I was going to say the Street Fighter and stuff like that. That's pretty much my introduction to martial arts. It was that, and then watching, movies like, was it Warrior and Here Comes the Boom and all of the random comedy movies that people put into this space. That's kind of was my introduction. So it honestly, it put me off doing it myself for a long time, I have to say. I played the game and you watch... And I don't think I've actually missed watching a single UFC card since that game came out. That's probably one of my accomplishments. Even live, which as a European fan has ruined my sleep schedule almost entirely.
Oh, yes. I managed to catch AEW on late night TV the other night. And I was like, what is this? I couldn't quite believe it. I was like... Seriously,
it's crazy how much it's gone. Seriously, we get it right. You'd think it used to just be on very, very late night TV, and now you're like it's BBC 4 and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
this is MMA. I was put off doing it because I tell people that the idea of hitting other people sounds great to me, but being hit back, I don't really fancy that, if I'm perfectly honest with you. The idea, and it's a bit of a give and take, so I can't really just be like, just let me hit you. That doesn't really work. So I never did it myself. But after COVID, my partner Tobias, who is Jiu Jitsu on Instagram, a lot of people probably see because we do collaborations on there quite a lot. He started doing an Ultra MMA charity event in 2021, just after COVID finished. And I kind of started cornering him a little bit. I would hold the pads up, do all the training and stuff like that while he's doing it. And I thought it was pretty exciting, but again, I don't want to be hit, so I kind of stayed away from it. And then he fell in love with jiu-jitsu off of the side of that, which was kind of my introduction to the space as a whole. But again, didn't really want to do it when I saw him starting it, because to me it was just kind of rough and tumble that you see kids do when they're little, right? Or adult soft play and all that kind of stuff, which now sounds great now that I've done it myself. But back then, all you really see is people kind of rolling around on the floor and hurting each other, and you're not really sure why or what it is. So I sat on the sidelines and watched him train for about 2 years, where I say kind of good at cornering. I still don't really know what I'm talking about, if I'm perfectly honest with you. But I got good at recognizing the moves I saw in the UFC and being like, I think you could do that maybe if you grab his foot.
Okay, cool. So you mentioned cornering to me earlier. I now know what it is, but for anyone that doesn't know what cornering is, can you please explain?
It's basically where I sit on the side of the mat, or if it's in MMA, I sit on the side of the cage and I shout very, very loudly so that the person who is doing it on my team can hear what they're supposed to be doing. Like I said, my role in cornering is mostly just shouting louder what his actual coach says. Okay, because I don't really know much about jiu-jitsu. I've only been doing it myself for, I think it's coming up for a year now at this point. So I would say my actual knowledge that is useful in those situations, not so great, but I can shout really, really loud. Okay, so what happens when my partner competes, or anyone from our gym, we have quite a competitive kind of gym, is the coaches will say things and then I'll just say it again really loudly by the camera.
I like that.
From what I've heard, it can be helpful. Sometimes it's less helpful because all they can hear is me screeching and they can't really make out the words. But I've been told it can be useful, so I keep doing it mostly.
I love the fact that you keep doing it, because the feedback I've had when I've not competed yet, but the feedback is that, you know, people from the sidelines are shouting or the coach is shouting and the competitor can hear absolutely nothing. They are just, you know, fueled with adrenaline.
It's kind of why I started doing it, because I noticed when my partner was competing that he couldn't hear what his coach was saying, right? And I know for a fact that he can do the things that they're asking him to do. You know, he's stuck in a position, he's clearly got a little bit tunnel visioned and he needs to do something. I can hear what the coach is saying, but I also know that he's more dialed into my voice than he is his coach a lot of the time. So obviously we live together, so there's a lot more recognition of my voice in that situation. So I realized maybe if I just say the same thing, he'll hear me instead of them. And he still can't really hear me. He has told me a lot of the time that he can just kind of hear the noise and not really what I'm saying. But the fact that he can hear me at all is sometimes helpful for him. So I just keep doing it. So that's probably what a lot of people will know me for, just being very loud.
Share with me one experience of cornering where you felt like you were kind of heard, or you know, that what you were saying actually got through and changed the game. Oh,
that's a good. I mean, I did manage to tell him to sweep at one point. That was. I've got no idea what sweep we were supposed to be doing. But I just shouted very, very loudly, sweep, and then suddenly he was on top and the other guy was on the bottom. So to me, that means it worked.
That does sound like it worked.
At the Somerset Open, I think it was one of those ones that we've done a couple of times. There's a lot of local competitions that we tend to do in the southwest of England. So it's a lot of kind of Wales, Somerset, Bristol, that kind of area that we operate in.
Fantastic. I love the fact that you're there. We've probably met each other in person a number of times.
I did. If you've competed at any of those events, you will have met me at some point, because I used to man the fighter registration desk at a lot of those events. So I was the first face that a lot of people saw when they walked in the door to compete that day, as I register and tell everybody that they're here and not dipping out and trying to chicken.
and getting disqualified or whatever the thing is if you don't show up on time.
Yeah, so that was me making sure that you did show up on time and getting to press the big almighty red button if you didn't or you missed weight, which was quite fun. I don't do that anymore, the competitions that we worked at, we had a bit of issues with competing and working at the same time. So I decided to just go more into the cornering side of things and actually working at it, which is a shame because I miss it. It was a lot of fun, kind of being the first person that people saw when they get there on comp day. Yeah. It allowed me to put some nerves at ease a little bit. You know, I saw a lot of, especially kids. There's a lot of kids that compete at the events that we did, and they get quite in their heads, bless them, when they walk in the door, especially if it's their first one and you see all the staging and all the people everywhere. And it's quite nice for me to have, you know, almost just address them directly rather than through their parents or, through their coach, or to make sure that they're happy to be here. They know what the rules are themselves. And it's just quite nice.
I love that. So, Lo, we've got a sense that you run a production company. Talk to me about what you were involved with when you were the kind of the first face when people walked into those competitions. What were you involved in, and what were you kind of doing beyond that?
So the company that I was working for at that time wasn't my production company. It was another one that's run by the Simon O'Brien, who runs our gym in Bristol Dojo. It's Showtex Media and Production. So I started working with them on the very first Enyo submission only grappling card, which I'm sure I'll talk about a little bit more.
Yes, because we're up to Enyo 6 now.
Yes,
and I
we
know
are.
There have been some open mats. So just to put a stake in the ground, there has been a period of time since the beginning.
Yeah, so the very first one was, I think, August 2022. We did that one, and it was shortly after we just started to. Me and my partner had started training at Bristol Dojo. My partner is a professional cameraman by trade, so he was asked by Simon, who owns Showtex, to come and help out being the mat side cameraman at Enyo. I thought I was going to sit in the back of the audience all day on my computer and do my day job, if I'm honest. And I got there and realized that wasn't going to happen because everything was far too interesting. And I ended up helping out, kind of running around the back scenes, giving people what they needed, getting tape here and there and all that kind of stuff. And I have been a part of every single Enyo show since then.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Various different roles. I now kind of do the walk on camera operation. That's me. So if you watch the pay-per-view cards, you'll see my shaky camera skills as people start walking between the mat. It's one of my favorite things, if I'm honest. It's Enyo is the reason that I started training at all myself. It's going to that show, the first one, working on the second one, and every show since then, and seeing these incredible women that have been out there and doing this stuff just made me realize that I kind of had to try and do it myself. Particularly, it's Joanne Wellstead, who is the owner and the main person behind the Enyo show. She has a lot of things that she has to deal with in her day-to-day life, with chronic health issues, with her children, with her various businesses, and all of the other stuff that you have to deal with day to day. And it was, as I realized that she's not only doing all of that anyway, she's then running a gym for herself at Phoenix in Southampton. And now she's doing the Enyo show, and she competes herself sometimes and does all the kind of...
Amazing.
And I was like, I have no excuse if she's doing all of this stuff before I got to.
Okay, we need okay, let's put a pause on that. We need to just appreciate everything that we do and not compare ourselves with anybody else.
That's fair. No, it was mostly, as like I said, as at the time I hadn't been doing any sports myself, so it was the fact that seeing all of these incredible women juggling so many things that I say as an excuse, because I was using them as an excuse at the time. And then anybody asked me, why do you sit and watch? Why don't you come and join in? I'm just like, I'm more of a watcher of sports than a doer, or my knee hurts, or I've got this chronic health problem and I can't do it. I'm just too busy, and all the excuses that you put.
The excuses won't cut. It's not going to work.
Eventually it got to the point where I was like, I am just kind of saying this stuff for no reason because I'm too chicken to get on the mat. That is all it was. So seeing Joe and the other women on the Enyo show was incredibly inspiring for me, and continues every single time I do one. So it's why I keep getting on the mat.
Fantastic. I love it. I was very fortunate to realise that Enyo 6 was not very far from where I live and was able to come along. But you're absolutely right in saying how inspirational all of those women getting on the mats and competing.
Oh, you carry on.
Give me back some mic, Lo. Come on. I know we're both podcasters, but I need a bit more share now.
Strange to be on the other side. Normally I'm silent in this stuff.
No, it's fantastic. I was watching Hayley Curtis's stories and post this week. This episode will be out after that point, but she was saying about getting sports coach, a mindset coach to help her. Yes. And, she was reflecting on how smiley she was walking on at Enyo 6.
She was one of my favorites.
Overwhelmed. I'm kind of in touch with her, but, it sounds like the beginning of her journey wasn't that confident, smiley individual. And now, you get onto a stage like Enyo, because it does feel like a stage, very much so. Yes, it's a competition, but
No, it's a great
shine.
training ground, I would say, for the bigger. It's the fact that a lot of the women don't have the opportunity to get on these kind of big shows, and it not necessarily because there aren't a lot of them. There's just not a lot of spaces on the shows that there are, and the fact that the Enyo is out here kind of paving its own little way for us is wonderful. Like I said, it's really inspiring. Being able to hold the camera and see. Honestly, my favorite part, I would say, is the little look in a fighter's face as they switch from backstage mode to I'm about to take the competition mode. For me, it's my favorite part because obviously I get to see that for myself as the switch happens through the camera lens, and nobody else really gets to see that because the camera isn't switched on at that point. We're not recording it. Yeah. It hasn't been cut. They don't really know that they're on camera a lot of the time, and it's just being able to be in the privilege to have that kind of watch the women as they switch from that one mode to another and they start going into competitive mode, and it's just really great, honestly.
So tell me what it looks like. I can imagine, but share what that transition is physically. What happens?
It's a whole demeanor change for a lot of them, honestly. It depends on the woman, and obviously we have a lot of kids that compete on Enyo too, so it's really nice to be able to see the ones that they get a little bit overwhelmed sometimes, and I understand it. It's why I don't compete. There's no way I would be able to do this kind of thing. You know, you walk on and there's a lot of lights, there's a lot of cameras in your face, and there's a lot of people that you don't really know, and it's a whole lot for a lot of people, no matter what age you are, let alone these people who are 6, 7 years old who are competing on this show sometimes. But being able to see that like I say, they walk on, they see it's a little bit of apprehension for a lot of them if they've never done it before, where you see this camera in your face, right? So a lot of the time I try to hold it to the side and just so they can see a bit of a human face before all of the lights and the interaction in the stage. But it's just being able to see, I think, the little moment of preparation that they're clearly going through in their heads. Everybody has that little bit of the mantra, the words, the routine that you go through right in that moment before you step onto the competition stage. And like you said, it is a stage. It's very big. It's a full production, especially with Enyo and the Polaris shows that we work on as well. Those things are really grand productions. We're there, all day, sometimes the day before, setting up this stuff. But it's nice to be able to see that little change where the eyes just change a little bit. They get a little bit more focused and they switch into, it's what I call fight mode. Right, is they've gone through that final little preparation. They've said their mantra, they've got their last words from their coach, and it's just them and the walk-on that they're about to do. Right, and
I love it.
I adore walk-ons. They're one of my favorite things to do. The way people dance down the aisles onto the mats, and even the people who are nervous. Right, you can tell even if they're really nervous and they don't particularly want to be doing it. The second that they step onto the mat and the walk-on part is done, the whole body language changes when they feel that texture under their feet. And I just love being able to kind of see it without anything in the way. They don't even really see me. When you're stood in front of the camera, all you can see is the light that I'm kind of shining at you and a lot of metal. You can't really see. It's why I kind of poke my head out sometimes. No, there is a person.
It sounds fantastic. I've got a complete kind of, feeling. So going backwards from the match and kind of afterwards, I know when I've spoken with Emily Isles, she's one of the ones that says she kind of slaps her face and kind of, dances around. But then kind of there's preparation even before that. And I think that mindset and the mentality. But as someone that hasn't competed, I now have a bit more of a sense of what to expect. Certainly not on an Enyo stage at all, but even, a mindset to kind of proceed or just know how other people do these things, especially if you haven't competed before. I'm learning from you, Lo, and it's building that narrative. And I can structure that. I can compartmentalize the prior and then the kind of. I'm not going to do anything fancy. Admittedly, it's going to be in Barcelona. So
I think that flying somewhere to do your competition, I think, is fancy in itself, isn't it? Even if you don't get to do the fancy business class and stuff like that.
Okay, this is not necessarily breaking news. If you've been following my Instagram stories, I'm still looking for a competitor. I am white belt. I am Masters 4 and I am super heavy. So if anyone out there, this is a shout out, it's going to be really close to the competition, but all I want is a match. That's all I'm here for. Just once, just once. But I've now got a bit more of a context to frame the whole thing rather than just, walking into it, either being petrified or thinking I'm, recording a podcast.
I think a lot of people make a lot more of the competition mats and the show spaces than it needs to be a lot of the time. Obviously, again, I don't compete, so it's not like I can put myself in people's shoes. There's a reason I don't compete, and it's because I couldn't do it, right? I've often said if I was ever going to, it'd have to be some kind of emergency situation where you don't even really have to think about it, and someone's just like, you just need to go over there and do the thing, and I'm like, okay, maybe, but that's because I don't have any time
Joe might give you a call out now if she listens to this. Anyway, this is the Jiu Jitsu Lou podcast with me, Lou Temlett, coming to you from the UK. Go and check out the latest video clips over on Instagram at jiu.jitsu.lou. And as you're listening or watching on your favourite podcast platform, I'd really appreciate you dropping the show a rating and a review. Today, I'm having a conversation with Furneaux. So we've gone through the Enyo kind of concept. You are a no belt, but just remind me of the locations that Enyo has been in the Enyo 6 things so far, just so that anyone in the UK can have a sense of where they exist or pop up.
Yeah, so the most of the shows originate in Southampton, as Joe and John's gym is Phoenix MMA in Southampton, so it's right around the corner from the venue that we run it in. So the first 3, I believe, were in Southampton out of the central hall there. Then the 4th one, we actually had the privilege to go to BJJ Summer Week in Sardinia and do a showcase there. It was possibly one of the most stressful experiences I've had in my life, for a good reason, I will say, because it was wonderful. I wasn't expecting to do any of the seminars or anything like that. Ended up doing some while I was there. But the stressful part is getting all of the kit for a show across from England to Cagliari in Sardinia in suitcases was a bit of a nightmare, I have to say, trying to do hand luggage with video cameras and broadcast equipment, and the looks on the faces of the airport staff when we got to Milan and to Cagliari, it was awful. I felt very sorry for them as we're coming through with all these bags of wires, and we must have looked a right sight. But it was one of the coolest things I've ever had a privilege to be a part of. We were there for 4 or 5 days, and we had the Grand Prix show on the Thursday that we were there, and then once we'd got that kind of out of the way and got to see all of the incredible women who fought on that one. I believe it was won by Maggie Lira at the time, who has since retired since then, so it was one of the last things that she did before she did her IBJJF retirement match, which was really cool.
Okay, so I know you have some advice and something that you'd like to share with regards to Maggie Lira, so please feel free, because I think this is going to be quite fundamental for many of us. Yes,
this is one of the main reasons I stuck around in this space, if I'm honest, is something she said in her retirement speech just after her last fight, was that she gave a whole little Instagram live on the reasons that she was retiring. So obviously everybody assumes when you retire at about 30 or so that it's because you're pregnant or you want to do a career or you want some other kind of change. And obviously she basically said that we need more people in jiu-jitsu to be out of the competitive side of things. That we need the business people, we need the agents, the managers, the talent scouts, the gym owners. Everybody else outside of the competition needs to step up and get away from the podium a little bit. Right? And when she said that, it really resonated with me at the time, because it was right after we'd done the Enyo in Sardinia. It was right after a couple Polaris shows that I'd done, and I was kind of find my own place in the jiu-jitsu kind of community a little bit, where I don't do the gi and I stick with the no belt side of things. It's a little bit hard to find where you kind of belong in this space a lot of the time. And I knew obviously with the working with Enyo that I want to go into the helping the female side of things, but I didn't really know how to do that without just being yet another corner person who doesn't really know what they're talking about. But obviously my day job is marketing and podcast production like you and the techie side of things. So when she said that we needed more of these people, I realized there's a bit of a gap that I can kind of slot myself into a little bit and start providing a little bit more of the production side of things, the social media marketing, the little bit of mentoring, just talking about the other sides of jiu-jitsu, so that not everybody has to be on the podium. It's a personal choice for everybody, I think, and it's something that it's something I could never do. I really don't think it's something I would ever do myself. someone who's going to clip this and look back at it eventually when I end up competing at someday.
No, that'll be either me or you, Lo.
Yeah. As it stands at the moment, it's not something I have any interest in doing, and I think there are more people need to come into the space with that attitude. More people need to realize that there's not just podium is what's important. You don't need to be a top tier athlete to get involved in this space. There's nutrition, there's production, there's all kinds of areas that need help to grow the sport outside of itself. And if we want jiu-jitsu to be any bigger than it already is, and less of a niche, as most people describe it as, and it's reaching outside of the niche that we already have, that we need to be doing. So. I
agree. I'm always personally, I feel quite confused sometimes. I wouldn't call myself an athlete. Yes, I've kind of done university sports and various other things, but athlete as a single mother with 2 children, I would not be. When people are talking about strength and conditioning, I carry my daughter around and, kind of put her to bed when she's tired, or, it's like, that's my strength and conditioning, and carrying the shopping bags, home from town or whatever.
Shopping in one trip is a great bit of strength and conditioning, I will say. That is most of what mine is.
So the kind of the phrase athlete, I'm really pleased to put aside. I'm not saying never. I'm just about to move, and I think the distance I have to travel and the walking and everything else will potentially change life, but like you're saying, having those support networks, those individuals, those businesses around the art. My professor, I remember, kind of checked me on the sport thing, and actually the sport is the competition bit. But when you talk about jiu-jitsu as an art, that actually sits really beautifully with me, because it feels more creative. And actually you and I in a marketing space supporting jiu-jitsu and having a mindset and a creativity sense around it feels right.
It like you said, it feels like that's something we can actually contribute a little bit, right? It's like you said, it's similar to you. I'm a hobbyist at this. I don't ever want to brand myself as an athlete, because it feels like I'm diminishing the word a little bit for the people who are. And it's the business side of jiu-jitsu is what fascinates me. It's what's kept me in this whole time. And it's the trying to get more people into it is the only thing that I'm really here for at this point.
Yes. And I'm so grateful to have you on, because that, we share the mission to encourage more girls and women and other individuals to come onto the mats. Yeah. That's all we want.
Just step on it. Honestly, they're really soft. I was actually literally last night, I was out at a party with a friend of mine, and we spent about half of it teaching them how to toe hold each other. Oh. Not that I'm even allowed or should know how to toe hold, but our gym doesn't really have a policy on what it can teach. Right, that my very, very first jiu-jitsu lesson I ever did, my coach taught me how to heel hook. I didn't even know what a guard was at that point. Didn't even know kind of the names of anything, but now I know how to heel hook, so that's fun.
Okay, mental note: do not ever get into a competition with Lo.
I honestly, I'm terrible. I would just jump guard and heel hook, and those are the 2 things I'm told you're really not allowed to do as a white belt. So that's why, again, no belt, no rules for that one.
That works. That's so good. Really encouraging more people to consider it. I actually have a flooring issue in my new place, and I'm going, maybe mats is the way to go.
Oh, that would be whole room. Honest, I have been saying when I move out of this place, I want a whole mat room to myself. Put up all my Polaris posters and all my Enyo posters on the sides. It'd look really great.
Okay, we can do some interior decoration as well. That's fine. We're creative.
Get you to come down and design it for me, right?
Lo, so we have talked about Enyo. Let's talk about your production company and what you're working on and what's upcoming for you.
Yes, so my production company is AnyFutureBox. I run it with my partner Tobias at Jiu Jitsu and our friend Declan, who we've just brought on board to kind of take it a little bit further. The production company, we've been running it for about 3 or 4 years now. It started just before COVID. It's probably longer than 4 years at this point. It was mostly corporate kind of stuff. And like I said, it went along with my day job, and it's not particularly engaging. And we've been wanting to kind of find a way to bring it into the jiu-jitsu space for a little while. So we did our first little campaign that we did was with Trip Jitsu. It's a clothing company based out of Weston. We did some little promotional footage for them. And most recently, we went down to film the 40 plus open mats that Rob Rutter runs out of of Swansea and that area, which was really good fun. Obviously, we were the youngest people in the room. It was quite a privilege to be able to be invited into that space. And
you'll have to share that, because if it's a 40 plus open mat, I'm in that category.
I was going to say I'll let you know for the next one. But it was really good fun. Honestly, it was great to be able to see the amount of experience and knowledge that was in one room that we don't normally get access to, that we were able to just kind of potter around in the background, and we interviewed a couple of people, and it was really nice. To keep an eye out for that. It'll be coming out in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
But at the moment, we're, like I said, we're moving into the jiu-jitsu space a little bit, so we're finding our feet. We got a lot of projects in the works that we're excited about, whether it's documentary, whether it's film based, whether it's production based, or live shows, anything like that. Is we're just kind of narrowed down what we can kind of contribute without taking away from other people at this point. But it's really exciting. So I'm hoping to do a lot more kind of filming with a lot of people. I'm hoping, like I said, I got a lot of ideas. I don't want to share too many because my business partners will probably tell me off for being a little bit too open about stuff. But
I love it. I would be having you vision boarding right now in the grandest. I have
heard about your Guinness World Record holder for finished boards, aren't you? Yes, I might have to run mine past you once I've done it, so that it can be record winning approved vision board.
Well, you have to visualize and share these things, share them with the universe, because they will come back surprisingly quickly. In most cases.
Yes, I was going to say is we've only been doing production outside of things for about a year and a half now, not even that, I don't think. And the kind of access to people and the things that I've managed to do in the last year has astounded me. I really, jiu-jitsu is surprisingly small and yet very large all at once. You can get access to the high level people quite quickly, and it scares me sometimes, I have to say. Wandering around the backstage of these shows with all these high level people, and I'm like,
it's good. I remember chatting with Sabrina Pavel on episode number 3, and she used to be involved with the kind of the production, or the kind of, I want to say back office side. It's not back office, but MMA, in the MMA world, and she had access to kind of lots of
it's crazy.
High level people.
The kind of people that just wander past you, and I'm like, I swear I used to watch you on TV. Like, it's mental. Like the Polaris 27 that we were at, I think it was last weekend, was Alex Caceres is the headline prelim, and it's somebody that I have literally been watching on the telly since I was quite small. He was in the UFC at the beginning, and who was it? Helen Harper. She was performing on the last Enyo card. I'm sure you were there, so you saw her fantastic performance that she gave. I've been watching her compete on the UFC since I first started watching it. So being able to see her in person and do her walkout with her, and it's like a dream come true, really. Sometimes I have to pinch myself that I'm even allowed in these spaces, let alone being a part of producing them. It's fascinating. It really is.
It is amazing, because those dreams and things you must have been, whilst you were gaming all of those, whatever, Tekken, Street Fighter, all of that must have been building the narrative for now, Lo.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's funny that you look back and you see all the little building blocks that kind of drop into what you didn't even know that you wanted to be doing with your life back then.
I wonder if anyone was to reflect on their own lives, what elements stick in their mind and that are kind of echoing out or playing out in real life now. Who knows? And likewise, any much younger listeners, let's see what happens. Our dreams do come true.
Absolutely. My only piece of advice is make sure you write down the things that you're doing at the moment that get to it. Looking back through all of my calendar and everything that I'd made notes of over the last year or so, and not to say in preparation for this, but I looked back at everything that I'd done to kind of remember what I can talk about, and it baffles me the things that I've managed to do, let alone the things that other people have let me do kind of for the last year. I'm excited to be doing more.
It's good, and I'm so pleased that we connected and got this podcast down. And like all of my guests, Lo, I will be inviting you back. This has only been running for about
talk about.
That's fine. Yeah, exactly. It will be exponential growth. So all of my guests I'd love to have back on, because like you're saying, it's having that incremental kind of snapshot of life and how it was, because we pass through so many days, weeks, training sessions, and we feel like we're not changing, like we're not growing. But if you were to reflect back and actually see, I celebrated on one of the last episodes that I, could comfortably talk about passing guard or a sweep or something. And I was like, my goodness, 18 months ago, I was not in this position.
You didn't even know what the names are of stuff.
Exactly. Exactly. So,
I had a similar experience. I just came back from Julia Scardone's Judo for Jiu Jitsu camp that she did up in Hull. She's doing another one in August, which I will be going to. So if you haven't been already, you have to go. Genuinely. Okay. It's one of the most fascinating experiences I've had in my life. There was 50 plus women on the mats all together, training, learning how to do foot sweeps from Julia, who is one of the most impressive people I've ever met. She's going to hate that I've said that, because she hates people talking about her nicely. But like you said, it's the looking back is that I thought I'd had a really difficult time right before I went to that camp with my jiu-jitsu journey, where I sat down with my partner. I was like, I feel like this is the ceiling for me. Like, this is as much as I can do. I have a lot of chronic health problems, so I only ever get to training like once, twice a week, if that, right? So I felt like that my body was holding me back from what my ability could be, and I was kind of like, maybe this is all there is for me, right? I then get to that camp a week later with all of these fantastic women who I get to speak to. I start learning things I've never learned before, and I realized that I do actually have a little bit of knowledge, and I am picking up stuff. And like you said, I can hold conversations about it now that I never used to be able to. I just kind of sat there and was like, yeah, that's when you grab a foot, right?
No heel hooks, Lo. No heel hooks.
Can you tell I love them?
Oh my goodness. Lo, right. I want one piece of advice for anyone out there currently training or thinking about training jiu-jitsu.
Oh, that's one piece of advice. I mean, just start doing it. I mean, that's a really, really cliche piece of advice. Everybody I've ever interviewed has said the same thing. You just got to kind of get on it and start. I think my advice would be to find somebody that does it already to go with you. That was what I found really helpful when I started, whether that be your partner, whether it be a best friend who already does it, or just me. You can come and train with me if you like, if you haven't done it. I drag people to the gym constantly, if I'm honest. I find it nice to be in an open mat situation where it's not necessarily as intense as an exercise class, and you don't necessarily have to worry about keeping up or holding people back, or just get yourself down to an open mat. The Enyo ones are really great. If not, there's plenty on gyms near you and all that kind of stuff. That would be my advice. Just start, and if you don't like it, come into the business side. You don't have to do the sport if you don't want to.
Exactly. There are always options.
We always need more people to help advance it, even if you're not rolling around on the floor yourself, right?
Exactly. Or competing, but maybe just once. So that's in the pipeline.
I'm really hoping you're going to end up finding a partner at Barcelona for you. We'll keep our fingers crossed. It's funny how many women there are in jiu-jitsu now, and yet still it seems difficult to find opponents.
Yes. We're just going to go for the, immersion. I always show up at the events, at the competitions, just to get a feel for what it's like. But it sounds like I've got no idea, which is absolutely fine. I'll go and do it for myself.
I think going to see them, I think, it's probably the best advice you can give. I think that's a great idea. Just put yourself in the environment and see if you like it as a spectator before you start getting into it. That's honestly how I knew I didn't want to compete. I wandered around the side of the mats and saw the people's faces as they're about to compete, and the way they come on. I was like, that is a bit much for me.
No, it's
not till you get there that you realize,
I could watch matches all day. I seriously could, but I love training it as well. So yeah. Anyway, Lo, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for buying a piece of merchandise. If anyone would like some Jiu Jitsu Lou merchandise, it's jiu-jitsulou.com/shop.
It's a really good size
of things on there. Anyway, thank you very much, Lo.
Thank you for having me. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for telling your friends about this show. And as soon as this episode ends, I'd really appreciate you to drop the show a rating and a review. Thank you again for listening. Catch you on the next episode of the Jiu Jitsu Lou Podcast.